I never imagined that a single act of kindness would completely transform my life. That day, when I found a stranger lying unconscious on the dusty road of my village, I had no idea that he was hiding a secret that could change everything I ever knew. What happened next was something that even my wildest dreams could never have prepared me for. I never imagined that a single act of kindness would completely transform my life. That day, when I found a stranger lying unconscious on the dusty road of my village, I had no idea that he was hiding a secret that could change everything I ever knew. What happened next was something that even my wildest dreams could never have prepared me for. I was a simple girl living in a small African village surrounded by endless fields and mud brick houses. My days were spent fetching water from the river, helping my grandmother prepare food, and selling small baskets that I made from palm leaves at the weekly market. Life was hard, but I had accepted my fate. Poverty was all I had ever known. Most nights, we went to bed hungry, with only hope and prayers keeping us alive. My father had died when I was a child, and my mother had abandoned us long ago. My grandmother raised me with the little she could gather, but age had stolen her strength, leaving me as the sole provider for our tiny household. That morning, I woke up before sunrise, tied a faded scarf around my head, and walked to the river with my clay pot balanced on my head. The path was lonely and quiet, except for the sound of birds welcoming the new day. After filling the pot, I began my journey back home, my bare feet pressing against the dusty earth. Halfway down the narrow road, I noticed something unusual. Lying near the bushes was a man, motionless, his clothes torn and covered in dirt. My heart skipped a beat. At first, fear gripped me. Who was he? Was he alive? Could this be some sort of trap? My grandmother had always warned me about strangers. But as I stepped closer, I noticed his weak breathing and pale face. He looked nothing like the men in our village. His clothes, though torn, seemed expensive, unlike anything we could afford. His shoes, though muddy, were made of fine leather. I placed my pot on the ground and knelt beside him. "Sir, can you hear me?" I asked softly, shaking his shoulder gently. He did not respond. My hands trembled as I checked for injuries. There was a deep cut on his forehead, and his right leg looked swollen. I tore a strip from my scarf and pressed it against the wound, hoping to stop the bleeding. His eyes flickered open for a moment, and he whispered something I could barely hear, "Do not trust them," before slipping back into unconsciousness. Those words sent a chill down my spine. Who was them? What danger was he talking about? I looked around nervously, but the road was empty. The sun was rising higher, and soon villagers would begin walking to the market. I could not just leave him there to die. Gathering all my courage, I placed his arm around my shoulder and, with great effort, dragged him towards my house. When I reached home, my grandmother looked shocked. "Child, what have you done?" she exclaimed, her wrinkled face full of concern. "We cannot take strangers in. What if he is dangerous?" "I could not leave him to die," I replied firmly. "Look at him, Nana. He needs help. If we do nothing, his blood will be on our hands." My grandmother sighed deeply but helped me lay him on our mat. We cleaned his wounds using herbal medicine she had prepared for years, and I boiled water to wash away the dirt from his face. As I worked, I could not help but wonder who he really was. His hands were soft, not like those of the men who worked in the fields. Even in his weak state, there was something dignified about him. Hours passed, and finally, the man stirred. His eyes opened slowly, and he looked around in confusion. "Where am I?" he asked weakly, his voice dry and hoarse. "You are safe," I assured him. "You collapsed on the road. I brought you here." He tried to sit up but winced in pain. "Thank you," he whispered, his eyes meeting mine. For a brief moment, I saw something in his gaze, a mixture of gratitude, sorrow, and fear. Before I could ask more questions, the sound of hooves echoed outside. I stepped to the doorway and saw two men on horseback, wearing fine clothes that did not belong to our village. They were scanning the area as if searching for someone. My heart raced. Could they be the ones he had warned me about? I turned to the man lying inside. Are they looking for you? I asked in a low voice. His eyes widened with fear, and he nodded weakly. Do not let them find me, he pleaded. I quickly shut the door and lowered my voice. My grandmother looked at me with confusion, but I placed a finger on my lips, signaling her to remain quiet. The men outside began asking villagers if they had seen anyone unfamiliar. My heart pounded harder with each passing second. Suddenly, one of the men stopped right outside our house. His deep voice rang out, "We are looking for a man. Tall, well-dressed, possibly injured. Has anyone seen him?" I froze, my hands trembling. The stranger looked at me, his eyes silently begging for help. At that very moment, I realized my life had just taken a dangerous turn. What I chose to do next could change everything forever. The air outside felt heavy as the men's voices grew louder. My grandmother and I exchanged nervous glances, both of us silently understanding that the wrong choice could bring danger to our door. I whispered to the stranger, "Do not make a sound." He nodded, his eyes wide with fear. I stepped outside, trying to appear calm. The two men on horseback looked down at me. "Have you seen an injured man pass by?" one of them asked sternly. I shook my head. "No, I have only been to the river this morning. I saw no one." They studied me carefully, as if trying to decide whether I was lying. Finally, the second man muttered something to his companion, and they turned their horses around. My heart only started beating normally again when their figures disappeared beyond the trees. When I returned inside, the stranger exhaled deeply, his face filled with relief. "You just saved my life," he said weakly. "You should rest," I replied, trying to hide my own fear. "Who are they? Why are they looking for you?" He avoided my eyes, staring at the mat instead. "It is complicated," he said finally. "If I tell you, I might put you in danger too. For now, just know that I cannot go back to them." His words only made me more curious. Who was this man? Why were wealthy people searching for him with such urgency? Over the next 2 days, I cared for him as best as I could. I fed him the little food we had and changed the bandages on his wounds. My grandmother, though worried, slowly softened towards him when she saw how grateful and polite he was. He introduced himself as Samuel. He never revealed much about his past, but sometimes, when he thought I was not watching, I caught him staring at the horizon with a look of deep sorrow, as if burdened by painful memories. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with orange and purple hues, he asked me, "Why did you help me? You did not even know me." I smiled faintly. "Because kindness is all I can afford to give. Life has taken much from me, but it cannot take away my humanity." He looked at me for a long moment, then said softly, "You have no idea how much that means to me." Day by day, Samuel grew stronger. He would help me fetch water, and we would sit under the shade of the baobab tree talking about life. He told me about distant cities, large markets, and grand houses that sounded like dreams to someone like me. Yet, even when he spoke of wealth, there was sadness in his voice, as though money had brought him more pain than joy. One night, when the moon was bright and the air cool, Samuel finally opened up a little more. "I was not always like this," he began, his voice low. "Once, I had everything, wealth, power, respect. But greed and betrayal took it all away. The people you saw looking for me, they are the ones who destroyed my life." I listened silently, my heart aching for him. It was strange, he seemed like someone who did not belong in our poor world, yet his suffering felt deeply familiar. Before I could ask more, the sound of galloping hooves broke the night's silence. My grandmother rushed inside, her face pale. "They are back," she whispered. Samuel's face hardened. "They will not stop until they find me," he said, his voice heavy with regret. I looked at him, fear and determination rising inside me. "Then we cannot stay here anymore. If they search every house, it is only a matter of time before they find you. Samuel nodded slowly. You are right. But leaving will not be easy. They have eyes everywhere. The hoof stopped right outside our house. Loud knocks echoed through the door. Open up, a voice commanded. My heart pounded wildly. Samuel grabbed my hand, his eyes filled with urgency. You must decide now, he said. If you hide me, you risk everything. If you give me up, you will be safe. The pounding on the door grew louder. My grandmother looked at me, her face torn with fear and uncertainty. I realized that my next choice would decide both our futures. The knocking on the door grew harsher, each thud making my heart pound louder in my chest. My grandmother clutched my arm, her wrinkled hands trembling. Child, we cannot hide forever, she whispered urgently. Samuel's eyes stayed locked on mine, silently pleading for my decision. I took a deep breath and whispered to Samuel, hide behind the baskets. Do not make a sound. He obeyed without hesitation, limping quickly to the far corner of the room where piles of woven baskets covered part of the wall. I threw an old cloth over them, hoping it would conceal him. With shaky hands, I opened the door. Two men stood outside, the same ones from before, their expressions cold and calculating. One of them leaned closer, his sharp eyes scanning my face. We have reasons to believe you are hiding someone, he said. An injured man. If you tell us where he is, you will be rewarded. I told you before, I replied, forcing my voice to stay steady. I have seen no one. You can search my home if you want, but you will only find two poor women with nothing to offer. The men exchanged glances. One of them stepped inside, glancing around the room. He kicked at the mat and peered into the cooking pots. My heart raced as his eyes moved closer to the baskets. Suddenly, a rooster crowed loudly from outside, startling him. He muttered something under his breath and turned to leave. We will be back, he warned. And if we find out you lied to us, you will regret it. The door shut, leaving the room in silence. I collapsed onto the mat, my legs weak from fear. Samuel emerged slowly, his face pale but determined. You should not have done that, he said softly. They are dangerous men. If they find out you helped me, they will destroy everything you love. I will take that risk, I replied firmly. But you owe me the truth. Who are you really? Samuel hesitated, his gaze falling to the ground. After a long pause, he finally spoke. My full name is Samuel Adewale. My father was one of the wealthiest men in the city. He built an empire that stretched across lands and businesses. But when he died, my relatives fought for his fortune. They betrayed me, and I was forced to flee. Those men you saw are hired by my greedy uncle. They want me gone so they can take everything. His words felt surreal, as if I were listening to a story that could never belong to my world. So you are rich? I asked slowly. I was, he replied bitterly. But wealth is meaningless when it makes you a target. I trusted the wrong people. And now, the life I once had is gone. I stared at him, torn between disbelief and pity. Here was a man who once had everything yet now sat injured and helpless on the floor of my tiny mud house. That night, as the crickets chirped and the wind rustled through the trees, Samuel spoke more about his past. He described the grand houses, the lavish dinners, the glittering parties that had once defined his life. But behind every story, I could sense deep pain, stories of betrayal by people he loved, of loneliness hidden beneath wealth. You saved me when you had nothing to gain, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. No one in my world ever did anything without expecting something in return. That is why your kindness is something I can never forget. Days passed, and Samuel's strength returned. He began helping me with chores, fetching water, gathering firewood, even trying to weave baskets, though he was comically bad at it. Slowly, he became a part of my world, and I found myself smiling more than I had in years. But the peace did not last long. One afternoon, as we returned from the river, we saw a group of strangers in the village square, handing out coins to children and talking to the elders. My heart sank. It was them again, Samuel's pursuers. They are getting closer, I whispered nervously. Samuel's jaw tightened. They will not stop until they take me back. And if they do, you may never see me again. That night, under the dim glow of a lantern, Samuel looked at me with eyes full of sincerity. There is something I need to tell you, he said. I am not just the son of a wealthy man. If I can reclaim my rightful inheritance, I can change not just my life but also yours. Before I could respond, a loud knock echoed through the house once again, this time more forceful, more threatening. The men had found us. The knocks on the door grew louder and more violent, as if the men outside would tear it down if we did not open it. My grandmother grabbed my hand, her face pale with fear. Samuel's expression hardened. We cannot let them in, he whispered urgently. Before I could respond, the door burst open. The two men stepped inside, their eyes scanning the room like hawks searching for prey. So, one of them sneered, we finally found you. Samuel stood slowly, his posture firm despite his injuries. Leave this village, he said coldly. You have no right to be here. The men laughed mockingly. Your uncle sent us to finish what we started. Do you really think you can hide forever? One of them grabbed my arm, shoving me aside. Samuel stepped forward instantly, his voice rising. Do not touch her. The man smirked, tightening his grip on me. You care for this girl? Interesting. Maybe your poor little friend here will regret helping you. Rage flashed in Samuel's eyes. Using the last of his strength, he lunged at the man, knocking him backward. The other man swung at Samuel, but Samuel dodged, grabbing a wooden stool and striking his attacker across the face. Run! Samuel shouted at me. But I could not leave him behind. Instead, I grabbed a pot of boiling water from the fire and threw it toward the man holding a knife. He screamed in pain, dropping the weapon. In the chaos, Samuel dragged me outside. We ran as fast as our legs could carry us, darting between huts and through narrow paths until we reached the edge of the village. My heart pounded wildly as we hid behind a large baobab tree. We cannot stay here anymore, Samuel said breathlessly. If I remain, they will burn this entire village to the ground. Where will we go? I asked, my voice trembling. To the city, he replied. I know people there who can help me reclaim what is rightfully mine. But it will not be easy. Those men will not stop until I am gone forever. The next morning, we left the village quietly, carrying only what we could fit into a small bag. My grandmother hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes. Be careful, child. The world beyond our village is cruel. But sometimes, the only way forward is to be brave. The journey to the city was long and exhausting. Samuel and I walked for days, sleeping under the stars and sharing whatever little food we could find. Along the way, he told me more about his family, how his uncle had manipulated everyone after his father's death, forging documents and spreading lies to gain control of the fortune. When we finally reached the city, I was overwhelmed. Towering buildings, endless markets, and crowds of people surrounded us. It was nothing like the quiet life I had known. Samuel led me to a modest house on the outskirts of the city. Inside, an older man greeted us warmly. Samuel, he exclaimed. I thought you were dead. This is Mr. Okoro, Samuel explained. He was my father's most trusted friend. Mr. Okoro embraced Samuel and looked at me curiously. And who is this young lady? Samuel smiled faintly. She is the reason I am alive today. Over the next few weeks, Samuel began working with lawyers and trusted allies to gather evidence against his uncle. It was a long and difficult battle, full of legal challenges and threats from his enemies. Through it all, I stood by his side, helping him in any way I could. One evening, Samuel took my hands in his. You have given me more than just my life back, he said softly. You gave me hope when I had none. I cannot imagine a future without you. My heart pounded as he knelt before me, holding a simple ring. Will you marry me? He asked. Tears filled my eyes as I whispered, yes. For a moment, it felt as though happiness had finally found us. But joy never lasts long in a world full of greed. The very next day, Samuel's uncle struck back with one final act of betrayal, one that would put everything at risk. The morning after Samuel proposed to me, the city was buzzing with chaos. News spread that Samuel's uncle had filed false charges, accusing him of fraud and theft. Men in uniform arrived at Mr. Okoro's house, demanding Samuel's arrest. Samuel stood tall, refusing to run. If I flee now, he wins, he told me firmly. I will face this battle head-on. We accompanied him to the courthouse, my hands trembling as I watched him walk through the heavy doors. The trial was intense and cruel. Samuel's uncle, a man with a polished smile and venomous words, painted Samuel as a greedy heir trying to steal what was not his. But Samuel had prepared. With Mr. Okoro's help, he presented forged documents, secret letters, and testimonies that revealed the truth. His uncle had orchestrated his father's downfall and stolen the inheritance through deceit. The courtroom erupted when the final piece of evidence, a recorded confession, was played. Samuel's uncle's face turned pale as his lies unraveled. The judge's gavel struck. Samuel Adewale is hereby declared the rightful heir to his father's estate. The accused is sentenced for fraud, forgery, and attempted murder. Tears of relief streamed down my face. Samuel turned to me, his eyes glistening. It is finally over, he whispered. But victory came with a cost. As Samuel regained his fortune, many of his old acquaintances who had once abandoned him returned, pretending to care. Wealth brought back the same toxic people he had tried to escape. One evening, Samuel sat beside me, staring at the glittering skyline. I could lose myself again in this world, he said quietly. But you remind me of who I truly am. True to his word, Samuel used his fortune not for lavish living but for good. He built schools in poor villages, hospitals for the sick, and programs to help orphans like I once was. He made sure that wealth became a tool for kindness, not greed. Months later, we married in a simple ceremony under a baobab tree, far away from the city's noise. My grandmother, though frail, traveled to bless our union. As Samuel slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt a warmth in my heart that no riches could ever match. When the guests left, Samuel held my hands and said, "You saved me when I was nothing. Now I will spend my life making sure you never feel like nothing again." His words stayed with me forever. Looking back, I realized that true wealth had never been in gold or land. It was in love, loyalty, and the courage to stand by what is right. My act of kindness to a stranger had given me more than I ever imagined, a life filled with purpose, gratitude, and love. Sometimes, the smallest choices lead to the biggest changes. And that day, when I bent down to help a man lying on the dusty road, I unknowingly changed both our destinies forever. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can change two destinies forever. If you love this story, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe for more African tales that touch the heart.